briefly, I can tell you. Thank you, Anna. I can tell you why and how we started this report in a few words. It was at the time of the Ukrainian crisis, and the French Red Cross was contacted by cryptocurrencies companies that basically wanted to propose us a few donations in cryptocurrencies. At the time, the French Red Cross didn't have a clear position on that, so we decided not to accept these donations. But at least it raised the question of how and if the French Red Cross could accept this kind of donations. And that's how we started to get in touch with the other actors, such as the WFP or the British Red Cross, to understand if and how we could do that. The report and the webinar don't push or don't promote blockchain technology. Just try to understand how it is possible to work in a humanitarian context with this kind of technology. So let's say that we have an absolute agnostic position on the topic. We will start the pitch session with Vincent Graff-Narbel, who is the head of Tech Hub of the ICRC Data Protection Office, that will give an introduction and present the project Partisia. So Vincent, if you want to start the session, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Julio. Thank you and good morning, everyone. Big thank you as well to the Red Social Innovation and our colleagues and friends at the French and Spanish Red Crosses to organize this event. Little usual disclaimer, I speak on my own capacity, not necessarily reflecting ICC position. So today I will speak about a journey that we started already a couple of years back to explore blockchain technology, where we wanted to see if indeed blockchain can be used in a privacy preserving and data protection compliant manner. But first, let me ask you a quick question. What is perhaps the biggest challenge with technology today? I think on my side that it is trust. And one way to address the issue of trust with new technology is, I think, to focus on respecting people's fundamental rights, in particular, the rights to privacy and data protection. For instance, in data protection frameworks, basic principles include lawfulness and fairness of processing personal data, transparency, and perhaps my favorite is about having a purpose to process those personal data. In addition, we know that people have rights with regards to their data about themselves. They have the right to know what is being processed. They have the right to rectify or delete the data and simply to object to the processing of their personal data. In our team at the Data Protection Office, we regularly have to assess new technologies, so much that our data protection handbook provides chapters dedicated to specific technologies, and one of them is indeed blockchain. When blockchain are mentioned or is mentioned as a possible solution to a problem, we start by asking some basic questions to help us deciding whether it makes sense to use blockchain. For example, and you probably heard about these questions, but you need to store transactions and their states. Can you actually trust the governing entity, or do you need to have a decentralized models? Do you really have multiple and not necessarily trusted people that need to write and read that data? And also, do you need to have a level of public transparency with the transactions? Now, very importantly, the question, so whether you need to store the personal data inside the transaction is in fact a make or break questions when it's to decide whether blockchain works, because blockchain are immutable, as we know. So when you put personal data, how would you comply with the rights I mentioned earlier, and the right of individual to delete their data, for example? So quite often, to be honest, when we see blockchain as a possible solution, often we find better designs without blockchain, in fact. But a couple of years back, we hold a very interesting discussion here in the ICRC, and it was about certain particular contexts where existing cash and voucher assistance solutions were hitting a wall. And the hard question was, how can you design a digital payment solution that does not require to share the identity of the users with different third parties? And there we decided to take the opportunity of this hard question to actually tackle two problems with one research, in fact. One was we wanted to explore how blockchain can possibly be privacy preserving. And the second was to see if such a privacy preserving solution would effectively work in a digital payment context. So our requirements included, of course, to protect users' identity as much as possible. And in particular, in CVA context, it's about not sharing possibly their identities with financial service providers. Second important requirement was to provide a level of transparency to the public and to the donors, of course, without violating the requirements of preserving identity. And we had also requirements that the solution would have to support our own crypto token, and also to be able to terminate basically the use of a token. So what is the exit criteria of a program like that? And lastly, we wanted to support peer-to-peer transactions. So we wanted users to be able to have transactions between themselves. So in a nutshell, a simple way to look at what we wanted to design was to provide a solution that is as close as possible from a property standpoint, as close as possible to what cash offers. Our central hypothesis was really to focus on privacy and data protection in order to bring trust. And we started to look for partners, and we evaluated several existing solutions on the market until we got in touch with Partisia. Partisia has a blockchain solution, which they really advertise as being one of the few blockchain solutions which is privacy preserving and really target that element. So together with Partisia, we developed a prototype that leveraged their blockchain. It's a digital payment solution that satisfies the requirements I mentioned earlier. And over the course of the project, we were able to deliver a working prototype end-to-end, which includes a progressive web application, so a mobile phone application if you wish. We also developed a backend that implements basically the onboarding of affected people, and that can be used to make the initial transfer of tokens to the users. And we also included a card-based wallet. So people who don't necessarily own a smartphones also are able to participate to the network. The transactions in the current prototype, the transactions are today effectively running on Partisia blockchain. And we also provided a public dashboard where the transactions can be audited and where basic statistics can be calculated on the use of the tokens. Now, this is all good, and you probably heard that kind of pitch before. So what is really the new thing into what we developed? The main innovation is that as soon as affected people withdraw the token that we have transferred to their wallet, as soon as this happens, then the further activities in exchanging the tokens cannot be traced back to them anymore. So it respects their privacy and it lowers the risk of re-identification. To start using the solution, we do need to have a list of people that we know, and we have to create that list in the backend. We need to add the wallet address the address of the wallet for each of the participants. Up to here, there's no anonymity or no really privacy preserving properties. But it's of course necessary to make the initial transfer to affected people. But from there, the first time users use their mobile app to withdraw the money from this wallet that we know the address of, then the tokens are transferred into what we can call the secret wallet. And this is where Partisia makes the magic, basically, thanks to their design, which uses what we call MPC. or multi-party computing. So the technique here is to use MPC. I don't know if you're all aware of that, but MPC is a promising concept which really look at bringing more trust in digital transactions by ensuring privacy. Now, MPC is not only for personal data, and it's also used by various companies to put together the data, do computation, but without sharing that data. There are several ways to implement multi-party computing, and every implementation is called an MPC protocol. So I'm not going to go too much into detail because it's a cryptographic type of protocol, but basically it allows several parties to collaboratively compute a function, but keeping their input private. So each party that takes part to the MPC holds their private input, and through a series of communication and computation, they collectively compute the result of the function, and the result is known to all parties. In our case, this MPC happens when affected people withdraw the token they received from the humanitarian organization. So in other words, when they do this, there is a smart contract, a private smart contract that executes the operation. And if you want to see in a more simple way what is happening, once the operation is done, then users have the tokens in their private wallet. In other words, the address of that wallet is now no more linked to their identity. So when they start exchanging the tokens of this private wallet to another person's private wallet, it's effectively like using cash, but it cannot be traced back to the people. So as I said, the prototype is done and working. And our ambition is in fact to open source as much as we can of this solution, so other organizations would be able to use it. And in fact, if this is something you're interested in, having a blockchain that really preserves the privacy of the affected people, I would be pleased to be contacted, and we can discuss more what we have and how to move forward. Well, that's all for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vincent. That was really interesting to hear the introduction and hear about Particia. Don't hesitate to put your questions in the comments and we can go through them in the end. I would like to introduce Celia Scrooby, who will talk a little bit about what the British Red Cross is doing in crypto donations.
Thanks, Anna. Yes, by way of a quick introduction, I work here at the British Red Cross in the innovation team, which is part of the fundraising department. So what we work on specifically looks at how we can create new revenue streams and reach new audiences. I put together some commentary on what I've learned over the last year and a half since I've been looking into how the British Red Cross can explore accepting cryptocurrency, which is in the report. Just to give a little bit of an overview before and some context. So similar to the French Red Cross, during Ukraine, we actually got quite a lot of interest from crypto companies or finance-related companies that were trading in crypto. And whilst we had done some preliminary research into exploring accepting cryptocurrency, the project wasn't in full swing. And it was one large donation offer that really motivated us and helped us understand the opportunity with crypto donors and how we can best serve them. Fast forward a year later, and we are now set up to take donations with the Giving Block, which is just one of many crypto donation solutions. And I will kind of just highlight some of the reasons why other charities are looking to accept crypto and why some of the advice that I give is kind of answering some questions that come up quite a lot for charities looking to explore this new revenue stream. So the Giving Block have cited a few facts to kind of highlight the demand, one of which is that 84% of millennial millionaires actually own crypto. And within the last year, 45 of the Giving Block's 50 UK charities joined. So they've seen a huge uplift in their UK client base in the last year, the majority actually. Save the Children US have raised over $7 million through their crypto fund. And the average crypto donation was about $10,000 in 2021. It's actually now down to $6,000. But again, if that's your average donation, you can see how that's much higher than your average fiat donation, for example. So you can see with those kind of headlines why a lot of charities are interested in working out how they can make the most of that and use those funds and serve those donors to best serve their causes. I think the one thing that comes up quite a lot is the opportunity seems to be there, but a lot of organizations and charities don't really know how to start, especially, for example, when people in the fundraising department perhaps go to senior stakeholders or their legal department, and there are a lot of questions around due diligence and anonymous donations. So hopefully my next few points will give some information around at least how to approach those slightly difficult conversations. So the first thing I would say is that it's really important if an organization is looking into this to understand that yes, it is risky, and that is just something that the organization will have to accept. But there are some ways and initiatives that you can do to help de-risk it, or at least take an innovation approach and start really small. So decreasing your exposure, for example, to reputational risks. So the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was finding a trusted partner. So there are lots of crypto donation platforms out there. A lot of them are in the US, although there are some small providers in Europe. Like any new project, it's really helpful to do some market research and just work out what size of service you want and what's out there in the market. You know, a simple market audit or comparison table is really helpful. So looking at the different fees platforms might take around when a donation is accepted, what part of that the platform takes back, for example. And whether actually an organization might want to partner with someone who is headquartered in their country versus a different time zone. So, you know, this is all something that can be done over the course of, let's say, a couple of weeks to a month, really gathering that information. And then once that is done, I imagine, depending on the size of the organization, there might be a formal procedure around how to take, for example, 3 of the most liked platforms and decide on which one is the best for a test. That's something that took quite a long time for us at the British Red Cross because we had a very rigorous procurement procedure, but perhaps at other organizations, when you're looking to test things at a lower level, the process is a little bit more agile. Either way, it's probably going to be helpful to have somewhere in writing the process of which you selected it, just in case in the future you need to reflect back on it. One thing that comes up time and time again is around anonymous donations. A lot of platforms allow you to turn off anonymous donations. So when a crypto donor makes a donation, they have to provide their name, their email address, their billing address, and obviously the donation amount. And some providers may even ask for more information. So for example, driver's licenses. That's something that each organization kind of look into independently. So it is a common misconception that crypto donations are just anonymous. Other thing I would want to highlight is around screening donations. So again, on a lot of charitable organizational websites, there are some levels at which you would screen donations and which you wouldn't, for example. So, for example, donations over $500 or $5,000 may qualify for kind of ethical screening, whereas donations under that amount wouldn't, because it's, you know, the risk is so low. So that's a very helpful threshold to discuss internally. We have found that screening every donation, very small donations, we're talking sort of $20 here and there, is actually not a good use of time, and that sparked conversations around kind of what is the threshold for a philanthropic gift, for example. And a lot of the time this work has already been done and is aligned with fiat donations, so perhaps taking inspiration there is really helpful. The other thing that we have also found an interesting point of discussion is around refunds. You know, whether we get a crypto donation in and we want to give it back, that's actually a very tricky thing for the organization to do. So for this point in time, whilst we are at a very, very small scale, we aren't taking refunds, and we declare that very clearly to donors on our website. And then the other thing to mention is now reflecting back on working on this for almost a year and a half, what I would have done at the beginning is have some kind of crypto donation guidance in place. So essentially summarizing a lot of the approaches that I've just discussed, and having that in writing so that, for example, the Charity Commission can see that we as organization have done that thinking, should anything go wrong. And just to finish very quickly on some of the results that we've seen, or some of the approaches we've taken. So for the last 6 months, we have been able to take crypto donations. We haven't been marketing it, and we've been putting the crypto widget behind a password encrypted page. So it's very difficult for someone who isn't already proactively searching to actually find us. And even when they do find us, there is a screening process that any prospective donor has to go through to even get to the widget. So it is quite an opaque user journey at the moment. And what we'll be looking at in the next 6 months is actually how we can make donations for donors wanting to make small individual donations a lot easier, while still maintaining that threshold for high value gifts going through our screening process. We hope one day that we will be able to do kind of a proper in-market test and experiment with some of the great campaigns that the Giving Block have, especially around Q4. So, you know, Caring for Crypto, for example, a lot of the Christmas campaigns. But obviously, we are taking a kind of test and learn approach. So we are going through certain thresholds to make sure that we know what we're doing before we go to that next phase. So for example, if we've had 6 months of safely taking donations, how can we incrementally look at opening that up even further? So that's, again, touching upon how you can look at exploring accepting crypto, but at a very, very low level so that the risk is very manageable. All of this is kind of covered in the report. And again, if anyone's got any questions, then please let me know.
Thank you, Celia. Donation and financial opportunities are very important for charities and organizations such as the Friend, the British Red Cross, and for all the movement. But now we are happy to welcome Human Haddad, who is the head of emerging technology at the WFP. He will present us the project Building Block, focusing more on humanitarian action, cash transfer, and transparency. Thank you, Human, for being here.
Thank you, Julio. Can you please confirm you see my slides?
Yes.
All right. So why is it that in 2023, collective humanitarian action still remains uncoordinated at the beneficiary level? One of the reasons is that the humanitarian ecosystem was not really designed, but it evolved in response to various crises, forming a loosely connected system that's fragmented and not orchestrated. In many situations, we have multiple organizations assisting the same people. For example, if you case the case of Ukraine, you have ICRC, WFP, UNHCR, UNICEF, and another at least 40 organizations, but we're still pretty much operating in our silos according to our mandates. And this is particularly problematic in the area of cash-based transfers, in particular multi-purpose cash or unrestricted cash, because there can be a lot of overlap between our mandates. You could have a hungry refugee child that's in need of medical care, for example. And without common visibility into who's assisting whom with what, we can't really get the coordination we need to ensure we don't underserve or overserve collectively the people we serve, in particular because of let's say, limited resources that we know we all have. And the challenges to some extent are technological. It's difficult to connect using traditional technology, all of these different organizations together. But it's also a little bit, if I can say, political, because if everyone uses one system to transfer assistance to all beneficiaries, it can get coordinated. But often the issue of which system this should be, the system ownership issue, prevents that collaboration, because we all want to be seen in front of donors as being the leaders in cash and having the best systems. And so, this poses its own sort of problems. So in 2016, a solution was devised called Building Blocks to, try and address these issues. At its core, it's a blockchain network. Various humanitarian organizations, UN and international NGOs join to collectively form a blockchain network through the nodes that connect to each other. And on top of this network, we deploy smart contracts or applications aimed at use cases of interest to the humanitarian community. One, it brings an innovative technological solution to the challenge of connecting otherwise multiple organizations together directly through a resilient, self-connecting, self-healing, self-maintaining blockchain network, in a sense. But also a political solution. The way we have designed the system, every participating member is 100% equal owner, operator, and governor of the network. Therefore, hopefully taking away the system ownership issue. It's a collective system, collective infrastructure that we're all equal in. And we put the beneficiary at the center of everything we do, and contribute assistance and potentially redeem assistance from that center, thereby gaining visibility. And by knowing who's assisting whom with what, we can ensure that the distribution is more equitable. There is no under and over serving. And in the case where the assistance is also redeemed from the same place, the beneficiary redemption experience can be simplified. In the previous slide that I had, actually it can be pretty much a reality in Jordan, where WFP uses one bank to transfer cash to the beneficiary, UNHCR another, and so on and so forth. So beneficiaries have 4 or 5 bank cards, ATMs across the city to redeem their cash, whereas their assistance could be combined and redeemed in one place if there is collaboration. In this scenario, we take a privacy by design approach. So it's a private permissioned blockchain as opposed to the typical public open blockchain. And no sensitive information such as names, birth dates, or biometrics are ever stored on our chain by design and by its governance framework. And we really aim to harmonize organizations, empower the individuals, and create a more efficient humanitarian systems. with no under or over serving. So the results we reached so far, Building Blocks is now the world's largest implementation of blockchain technology. We're serving 4 million people on a monthly basis. We have operated in Bangladesh, Jordan, Lebanon, and Ukraine, and this year we're looking at potentially adding other countries to that. We processed 23 million transactions so far without error. And in Jordan, we've managed to save $3 million. UNFPA, UNICEF, and UN Women have used our system to distribute cash, sexual and reproductive health items, and hygiene items as well. And in Ukraine, we have helped coordinate the activities of Ukraine and Lebanon combined 50 organizations, but in Ukraine alone 40 organizations, which has helped prevent $100 million of what we call unintended assistance overlap or otherwise duplication. So there's a cash working group there. There's an agreement if an organization has assisted a family in this month, no other organization will assist them. Before Building Blocks, there was no visibility on who has assisted whom, and now there is. So that $100 million would have gone to some families who would have got more and some would have got none, again, because of lack of resources. Now can be more equitably and is more equitably distributed. So people who have got nothing at least get something. Our Building Blocks is open for free membership to all reputable humanitarian organizations, currently UN and international NGOs, with a demonstrated history of the do no harm principles. Even though it's a private permission blockchain, even though there's no sensitive information, we just want to know, at least on the onset, a joining organization doesn't have the intention to somehow harm the people we collectively serve. We also have a governance framework that members need to sign and agree to, which outlines things such as membership criteria, onboarding, offboarding procedures, data protection, privacy, dispute resolution, network maintenance, and so on and so forth. And with this, we hope to, and it's a new model, it's difficult, it's decentralized ownership, decentralized governance, whereas at least in the humanitarian world, we're always used to having centralized versions of things. But we are making some progress in that area. And the investments in the network, especially again in the current donor fatigue environment, are synergistic. So all of the smart contracts on the network are freely available to other members. We have developed, we think, a very robust, what we call a value transfer application. So anything coming in can get first coordinated, and from the same wallet, the same different types of assistance can get distributed, including very, very complex multi-layer programmatic requirements, including donor restrictions in terms of what can or cannot be bought, the overlap between different interventions. This is all handled by the system quite well. And we can show essentially to the donors that we're being efficient. We're not wasting resources creating 10 different systems and 10 different versions of fragmented beneficiaries in our systems. But one system, we put all the resources, we have one view of the people we serve, and that way we can work with them better. And this being a blockchain network at its core, like an operating system, you can install different applications on it. So we have the value transfer, but should other members find it of interest, they can also explore digital ID, supply chain track and trace, land registry, so on and so forth, which we haven't explored yet, but it definitely, the use cases are out there and can be explored. So we would love it if other humanitarian organizations on the call and beyond would consider contacting us so we can potentially explore collaboration opportunities, including the ICRC, where I think Julia and I in 2019 presented to many of the CEOs of at least the Western Europe, and I think Australia was at the time, and America. So that would be good. So you can get in touch with us at that email address at the bottom. This is a photo from our January 2017 proof of concept in Pakistan, which was with 100 people, which has again now evolved to more than 4 million people. I'll post also a couple of extra information pieces or links to information in the chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Human. Now I would like to present Balt Lehman, who is Program Manager at the White Flag Foundation. Balt, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for having me. Yes, I'm presenting White Flag Foundation, which is a protocol, blockchain protocol, of course, we're talking about blockchain here, for safe communication between humanitarian aid organizations in conflict areas. I will share my screen. Wait a minute. Can you confirm if my screen is readable? Yes, thank you. So white flag, the purpose of white flag is trusted communication in conflict zones using blockchain technology. For me, the journey started in 9th of March 2022, when I heard on the news that the Russians bombed a children's hospital in Ukraine, in Mariupol. And I heard about the white flag program, but that the program got stalled. And to me, this was like a wake-up call. White flag actually is an invention by the Royal Air Force in the Netherlands and Capgemini. And Capgemini being my former employer, I was aware of this initiative, but also it got stalled somehow. I thought, well, this is really a call for action, because maybe this bombing could have been prevented when white flag protocol was being used. So what is white flag? It's there to communicate in a trusted and reliable way, of course, to use standard protocols based on the international humanitarian law. And it has implemented the science of humanitarian law on the blockchain protocol in an open way, and in a way that everybody can use it. So it's reliable and open access for the information, and it's supposed to be, and it should be completely neutral. So only independent humanitarian organizations should be able to post trustworthy messages. What is it exactly? So it's open and free and a technical standard. It's published on GitHub, by the way. It's already completed. It's a communication protocol between computers or mobile phones, of course, based on blockchain technology. It's open on any blockchain as well. And the means of white flag is to share information about entities, about events in conflict and disasters. It's really a communicating protocol. It's not blockchain itself. It's not also a complete stack. It's not software. It's not a solution for all problems, of course. And also white flag, it's not replacing existing means, because there are many ways to communicate, and but it's meant to use as a trustworthy layer on top of all other ways of communications. So in conflict areas, you use many means of communication, like visible signs, telephone, the internet, etc., etc. But there's a lot of fake news as well, and a lot of disinformation. And yeah, the war is any war nowadays is also very much a digital war, and there's a lot of fragmented and not to be trusted information. And in order to address that, that's the real reason of the white flag protocol. An example of how white flag could look like is this. It's white flag implemented on a visualization layer. That could be any GSM map. and it can identify, for instance, areas where there are mines or where it's dangerous, but also where there are no combating forces, where there's a hospital or a camp of refugees. So this is the way it could look like. Capgemini, in collaboration with the Royal Air Force, actually founded the White Flag Foundation, and the goal of White Flag Foundation that it will be owned by the different international humanitarian organizations, including, of course, or hopefully chaired by the Red Cross, International Red Cross. And the website is whiteflagprotocol.org, where it also takes a link to the protocol, the publications on GitHub, but also on the foundation. There are many use cases identified. Actually, the idea of White Flag was initiated in 2017. Then there was a quite extended simulation game where Vincent, who was the first presenter, also participated in, and so the International Red Cross and many other NGOs, such as Save the Children. And then in 2020, the program got stalled, and I heard about that. So a bit about me. I'm a senior in age, but also in experience. A technology strategist. I spent more than 16 years at Capgemini. I left there 10 years ago, actually, to start my own company to help NGOs with mainly with Salesforce technology. But nowadays I've freed up more time, so I'm in the process of writing a book about digital transformation for nonprofits, including a chapter about White Flag. I've finished that in Dutch, but which is my mother language, but I'm processing that into English. And I stepped up as a volunteer to be program manager of White Flag Foundation. And the first thing I've done is we created a pilot implementation by consortium with Save the Children, Pax for Peace, and then Capgemini and Funnel Labs, who implements the White Flag protocol on the Polkadot platform. So this is what's happening right now. It kicked off in April. It's a 6-month implementation project in a real case, a real life case. What's next? What we want to do next, of course, is to harvest the lessons learned from the pilot in South Sudan, where we have the challenges of not internet everywhere. Is the application on a mobile phone, is that really usable for a humanitarian worker? Does it make sense to use this protocol? Is it really helping? And what should we change to make it really worthwhile? And of course, we want to continue with this implementation in South Sudan. We want to include other NGOs and expand it to other regions. Also, White Flag Foundation is now still owned by Capgemini, but Capgemini is a commercial organization. They don't want to own the foundation. They don't even want to be part of the board. It should be independent and owned by the humanitarian aid organization. So that's also one of my goals. And we want to market and communicate White Flag protocol to enable NGOs to work together with a military precision, so to say, and to virtualize the actual situation in conflict areas, so that more lives can be saved and less lives are lost. So that's the message I wanted to share, and these are my details. I will share the slides also with you, and thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Bolt. Now we are a bit late, but we would like to answer to the questions that you wrote in the chat. Let's start with the first one from George. Basically, the question is open to all the panel. From the financial stock market and let's say the volatility of the blockchain market in the crypto market, did like the instability of this market had an impact on crypto donation transaction in the program you're running? And it's an open question for you. Who would like to jump in?
I can jump in quickly. Yes, it did impact. In terms of the discussions we had, we definitely discussed volatility in the market. And that's one of the reasons why we don't hold cryptocurrency. It is immediately exchanged once a donation is received. But also there are tax implications to holding cryptocurrency, which at this very simple MVP stage is not necessarily for just the simple functioning of what we're trying to do. And I would love to hear of organizations that do hold it, because I haven't heard of any of them yet. I imagine once upon a time that would have done very well, but now I wonder whether there are organizations that are still doing that.
Maybe I take the question of Karen from the Danish Red Cross. I've seen that Karen and Vincent started to an exchange on the chat, but maybe Vincent, you can answer to the question briefly directly. So Karen would like to hear more about the recommendation in terms of organizational readiness and preparedness measures in order to integrate a solution such as Partisia. If you can tell us a bit more about it.
Yeah, so first to clarify, thank you for the question. To clarify, we are actually looking for partnering to pilot the solution. In terms of preparedness, it's fairly complicated to have a one solution fits all, because again, the design allows for flexibility in terms of how you want to manage the tokens. The main idea is that you bring your own token as an organization. And this is because we absolutely want to control the inflow and outflows of the tokens. So we can't rely on existing tokens, because otherwise it's going to be seen really as a currency, which we really want to avoid. We want to go toward more, sort of different type of token, basically, right? And so like utility tokens or the likes. So that's one element. But when you do this and just talk about your own tokens, you have to decide how many tokens you want. Do you want one globally for the world? You want to, have tokens per context, per countries, per regions, per year, whatever. So you have a design decisions here to know how you do this. And of course comes then the questions of who is going to have the control on the minting, how are you going to manage burning tokens when they're redeemed. You have this notion of redeeming tokens in fiat, because some people might be accumulating tokens because they're merchants and providing the community with goods. And so there are some questions that are open, but voluntarily open, because not every context is the same. So we really wanted to have the ability to meet different needs, not only different needs of different organizations, but even within an organization, different needs based on the context. So we have good leads on what is required, so more in the shape of a checklist, if you will.
There's two more questions. We can try to answer to that very quickly. Vincent for Celia. So do you have recommendations for implementing enterprise solution to manage wallets, and on the pro cons to keep crypto donation in their cryptocurrency or exchange to fiat quickly?
I think I've covered the second part of the question in my earlier response. But Could I just have clarification around implementing enterprise solutions to manage wallets?
So I meant that if you suddenly start getting a lot of donation on a wallet, most wallets are meant to be managed on somebody's smartphone, and at an organization level, you need to have, I think, a bit more processes around managing typically the private key. You don't want to lose the keys of your wallet with millions of donation in it. And that is not always very simple in organization. At least when we talk here internally about these things, suddenly came, oh my God, how are we going to manage these wallets?
Yeah, it's a really good question. In the lead up to working out what platform we would go with, this was part of the due diligence and kind of security and data management that we had to consider. And it was decided that our finance team, certain members of our finance team would hold this sensitive data. And this is kind of recorded and captured in private files of ours, so that even if someone leaves the organization, there is kind of a small group that has access to that information. I would also say the Giving Block have been quite supportive in helping us answering a lot of our questions around how to manage that, which I imagine a lot of platforms are, because obviously we are the clients in this interest, and it's in their best interest to help us use the product safely.
Thank you, Celia, for answering to that. There's one last question from Mohan Mahira from the Kenyan Red Cross on NFTs and how the potential of NFTs within the National Society's actions. There are a few cases that have been presented in the report, so I invite you to have a look at it. I will send you back the link. Do anyone want to take this question on NFTs, or maybe we can close up the session, and Bahira, maybe we can have a conversation on that in a bilateral time. And Anna is sharing again the link in English and French of the report. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was more 55 minutes rather than 45, but still it was great to hear you and share what you're doing. Thank you again, and have a nice day.